Hey everyone, it's Marvin. Thanks so much for listening to Books and Boba. I just wanted to take a quick second to remind you that Books and Boba just launched our Patreon to help support our future endeavors. Rira and I have been running Books and Boba for the last 6.5 years, and we've always talked about wanting to do more, including expanding our content offerings, being able to go to book events and do more coverage. And so to help us get closer to those ambitions, we started a Patreon to help us grow and to better support books by Asian and Asian American authors. We are offering 2 tiers for our Patreon. The first is our regular Boba member coming in at $3 a month, which will give you access to our brand new Books and Boba Discord server so you can engage with your fellow Books and Boba Club members and also Rira and myself in real time. This is where we'll be aiming to move the bulk of our book club discussions, but rest assured we'll still have a presence on Goodreads as well. And our premium tier is our Honey Boba member tier coming in at $5 a month, where in addition to access to our Discord server, you'll also get access to our monthly Boba Chats, a bonus podcast where Rira and I and some guests will get together each month and have a more casual discussion on stuff that may or may not be book related, as well as answer some listener Q&A. Honey Boba members will also have access to a poll to help decide an official Books and Boba book pick once per quarter. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, support Books and Boba on Patreon by going to patreon.com/booksandboba. As always, Rira and I really appreciate your support. All right, thanks for listening, and I'm on with the show.
You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
And welcome back to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Rira Yu.
And we are here for our monthly book news update. It's the mid-month episode for June 2020. Rira, how's your June going so far? I know that it's a rhetorical question at this point, but how are you?
I just want to say we are living in the darkest timeline.
It really does feel like that, huh?
Yeah, I'm sure I said it in a previous episode, but not much has changed, which really disturbs me because you would think that with time passing that the whole like COVID situation would be better, and with a lot of the violence that is happening would be better. But yeah, not much has changed, and more things seem to keep piling up.
I mean, I think that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is also like this whole thing from COVID to the protests has been a real shock to the system. And it's a system that's been broken for, our entire lives pretty much. And some might even say the entire lifetime of this country that we live in. So on one hand, it does seem like things are piling up, but on the other hand, they've been there like for years and are now being exposed through, a crude metaphor would be like this whole situation that we find ourselves in is kind of like, would you say it's like surgery or more like penicillin? Or is this a really bad allegory I'm building right now?
Yeah. Well, like it's good that things that were broken in our system are coming into light, and it's not just lip service anymore, that there is action happening, that the community is getting really involved in making those changes. So it is good, but at the same time, it's a lot. And, you need to find a balance between, being active, being informed, but also taking care of your health. Because if you don't take care of your mental health, then really you can't contribute as much as you can. So
yeah,
it's been a balancing act for me, and I'm pretty sure it's been a balancing act for a lot of other people.
Yeah, I think because of social media and the fact that like news travels at the speed of data now, it's easier to stay in touch and updated on things. But at the same time, it's a lot of information and it's a lot going on because there's so many like different things, like even in our own book community. And I guess we can briefly talk about it. I don't want to go too much into the whole Paul Kruger situation, but it was brought to light that an author that we promoted on our book club has been, I guess, revealed as a serial harasser of friends and women. And, you know, it's the type of thing that started as a series of subtweets that suddenly got bigger. And because the issue with him was so widespread, it was real hard to keep it a secret. And I mean, from our side, I think it would have been really easy to have missed this. But it was brought to my attention by someone from the community who asked me about him, and then, you know, digging into it and kind of reading what people are saying, and also the fact that he was also dropped by his agent as a result of these allegations. It got to the point where we, as a book club that strives to promote not only Asian American voices, but diversity, equity, inclusion, couldn't just stand by and like also not do anything. So we did pull our coverage of his book from our podcast. And we made a brief statement on Twitter, but it was the least we can do to, you know, make up for and also address this new information that we have received, you know, because that's the thing. Like, once you get new information, like, you have to, you know, take action, also take responsibility. And I think that's, you know, that's why we did what we did. So
yeah, and also we have like people who have listened to our podcast, like, you know, they may have been victims of the harassment. So yeah, it was really the least we could do by pulling the episode and our coverage. So thank you to those who bravely spoke out, and thank you to those who brought our attention to the matter. And we're going to move on. We're going to move on to our news episode. There's a lot to go over. There's a lot of great news. I mean, throughout this, you know, quarantine, everyone's kind of like, what's going on? Are people still making stuff? And people are still making stuff, and people are still getting deals, and people are still like, there's a lot of really great books coming up in the next few years that we're super excited about. So yeah, Rira, why don't you start us off with the first story? Okay, our first story is Knopf acquired Nobel Prize for Literature winner Kazuo Ishiguro's newest novel, Clara and the Sun. The story follows a highly observant artificial friend, Clara, who monitors the shoppers who come into her store, hoping that someday a customer will choose her. Publication is set for March 2021.
I'm intrigued, but also this sounds like, I mean, Kazuo Ishiguro is known for writing bummers, right? I mean, I don't mean that in a pejorative way. Like, his stories are melancholic and really introspective, and like are not necessarily like feel good pieces, right?
I think Kazuo Ishiguro is definitely one of those authors who, you know, takes the time to reflect on what is happening in the world and incorporate that into his story. So yeah, it could feel like a bummer, but it can also be a reflection of the truth that we're living in today. And a lot of people don't understand that writing is political. Like, there is no neutral ground for it. So yeah, like Kazuo Ishiguro is the author of Never Let Me Go, for those who are unfamiliar with the name. And Never Let Me Go was a book that we have covered for our book club.
Yeah. Next up, Holiday House acquired Qing Zhuang's picture book, Rainbow Shopping. Set in Manhattan's Chinatown, the book celebrates the joys of a mother-daughter trip to the grocery store. Publication is scheduled for summer 2022. Oh. I hope it's an Asian grocery store.
Yeah, it's an Asian grocery. Probably Chinatown. I will say that I have never liked my grocery trips with my mother.
Really?
Or just grocery trips in general. I hate grocery shopping. Actually, Dan is the one who grocery shops in this household because I hate it so much.
I mean, but trips with your mom to the grocery store is when she buys you candy. It's like, you know, you find that one. You always get one thing. What do you mean? Right?
Like, when I would go with my mom, like when we would pick up seafood, she would like like she would like ask me like, oh, which crabs do you want for dinner? And it's like, oh wow, I'm gonna pick the animal that that we're gonna kill to eat. Not really a pleasant experience.
I mean, I guess I wasn't as thoughtful a child as you were when I was a kid, but
I mean, yeah. Not a grocery shopping fan for sure. Did not get candy or that many treats either. Next up, Avon acquired debut author Julie Chu's The Donut Trap, which follows a woman working at her immigrant parents' donut shop and who is living a monotonous routine until she reunites with an old college crush. After a disastrous dinner with his mother, she realizes that maybe he isn't as perfect as she thinks, and worse, he doesn't think she is either. Publication is set for fall 2021.
Okay, I get the donut part, but what's the trap part? Is this like some sort of parent trap? No.
I'm sure the book will reveal why it's called that. Have you been? You've been to Donut Man, right? I feel like everyone has if you live in the 626 area.
I haven't been to Donut Man, but I have been to we do have a local donut shop in our city called Uncle Joe's Donuts. That's our local place.
Yeah, Donut Man is out in Glendora, and it's a really, really small.
Oh, that's like the other side of LA from me. Yeah, I don't go that far for donuts.
I've done a couple of like late night trips to get donuts from Donut Man, and I think it's run by a Japanese American family.
Okay,
if I'm correct, I'm not sure, but
yeah,
it's great donuts. If you ever come to LA, definitely check it out.
Asian-owned donut shops are a big cultural thing in Southern California. A lot of refugee families who came over post-Vietnam War were able to provide for their families through opening donut shops in their communities. So I think if this is what this book is about or centered around, I think it'll be really interesting. In addition to the rom-com plot that's on top of it.
Do you have a favorite donut flavor?
I like a good glazed donut, but I like the ones, I think they're called old-fashioned, where it's more dense and cakey.
I see.
I like those a lot. I don't like the jelly-filled ones.
Oh man, I love the jelly-filled. I love the jelly-filled ones.
I don't want stuff in my donut, is the thing.
My favorites are jelly and probably like maple.
Maples are good. Maple bars?
Yeah. Maples are pretty good.
Yeah. Fei Wei and friends bought The Silence of Bones author Jane Her's new YA historical mystery, The Red Palace. Set in 1750s Korea, the book is based on the well-known Korean story of the tragic relationship between Prince Sado and his father. After a bloody massacre takes place at court, 17-year-old palace nurse Hyung and 18-year-old police inspector Yojin.
I think it's Ojin. Its romanization's weird.
An 18-year-old police inspector Ojin must clear the crown prince's name after he is accused of the murders. Publication is scheduled for winter 2022.
Oh yeah, I love historical murder mysteries and June Her's The Silence of Bones is we've talked about that book a couple times on our show, and it's also like a Korean historical mystery, and it follows a teen Tamo, and Tamo is like an indentured servant to the police officers. So definitely excited to read this one as well. I don't know anything about the story that it's based off of, like the Prince Sado and his father. My Korean history is just terrible, so maybe I'll learn more about it before I read it.
I'm sure there's a drama about it somewhere you can watch.
There's a historical like drama for every like tragic monarch. Next up, HarperCollins acquired North American rights to a sequel to Tana Lai's National Book Award winning novel Inside Out and Back Again. Set 2 years after Ha and her family fled Saigon at the end of the Vietnam War and settled in Alabama, the book follows Ha, who learns her family is to move again, this time to Texas for greater opportunities. In many ways, settling in a land with real cowboys and fresh papayas, proves even more daunting than her time as a brand new refugee. It's set for winter 2022.
A lot of Southeast Asian books coming out, or authors getting deals, which it's good to see. As much as I love Viet Thanh Nguyen, it's good to see other voices getting play as well. Like it gives a little bit of hope that maybe we aren't in the darkest timeline, although we are in a dark timeline, where the publishing industry can change.
Well, there's definitely. We'll talk about this later in our news part of the episode, but there's been quite a shakeup in the publishing industry recently. So yeah, definitely change is coming.
Yeah. All right, next up, kids can acquire the middle grade graphic memoir Yellow Singing Sail by Yifang Huang. Set in China during the one-child policy era, the memoir details the author's adolescence as an only child and the struggle to forge an artistic identity and find friendship, made even more challenging by a move from a small town to a big city. Publication is set for spring 2023.
Ooh, middle grade graphic memoir.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a great book that can help build a lot of empathy. So congrats to Yin Fang. And yeah, looking forward to seeing the art, actually. I'm interested in that.
Next up, Viking acquired Sarah Kuhn's contemporary YA novel From Little Tokyo. The novel follows an orphaned mixed-race Japanese teen who doesn't believe in fairy tales until she learns her presumed dead mother is not only alive, but is also a famous movie star. She teams up with a charming young actor on a romp through LA to find the truth about her past. Publication is planned for summer 2021.
I'm excited just because it's another book that'll be set in LA.
Man, Sarah's killing it.
I mean, I'm super excited that it's going to be set in a part of LA that isn't usually highlighted in books. You know, it's not Hollywood, it's not the West Side, it's not Beverly Hills. And it's a community that we're both a part of. So yeah, congrats to Sarah. That's awesome. Next up, in a 2-book deal, Philomel bought world rights to poet Jillian C's books My Love for You Is Always, illustrated by Michelle Lee, and You Are My Favorite Color, illustrated by Nina Mata. Told over the course of cooking a traditional Chinese meal, My Love for You centers the enduring love a mother has for her child, and the second features a parent encouraging a child to be proud of and comfortable in their skin, whatever shade it might be. Publication is planned for fall 2021 and summer 2022, respectively.
I'm particularly interested in the second picture book, You Are My Favorite Color, because it explores colorism. And that is not something that is just in the Black community. It's very prevalent in the Asian and Asian American community. People with darker skin, they get made fun of quite a bit. It's not, of course, it is like nowhere near the same as the Black community, but it's there. And it's really nice that it's a parent encouraging their child to say like, hey, like you're beautiful no matter what shade you are, because that is like the opposite of, of like what usually happens.
Yeah, it's interesting because like the colorism comes in the form of like microaggressions and also restrictions, right? Like girls aren't allowed to go play in the sun because they might get dark, or they aren't allowed to, be physical because they might bulk up. And it's like there's a lot of like ingrained, internalized patriarchy that is also combined with colorism in a lot of cultures, and specifically in Asian cultures, that it's worth it to address. And I think because it's a picture book, it's a good way to both teach kids and also the parents reading it about, like I said, again, empathy and how to be like not a dick.
I actually had paler skin when I was living in the East Coast, but then ever since I moved to California, my skin naturally got darker because, the sun here is ridiculously intense. And no matter how much sunscreen I put on, it's, my skin is going to burn a little bit. And family members who have visited me, they comment on it like offhandedly, being like, oh, you should, make sure to wear sunscreen. Like your skin is starting to look like soy sauce. And I'm like, okay, that's really inappropriate.
Just tell them it's what all the white people do. Like they love getting tan. So like we're not going to get into that because they've made comments about that as well. So, Jeez.
Yes. Yikes. Next up, Macmillan's imprint acquired world English rights to Jesse Q. Sutanto's Theo Tan and the Fox Spirit, as well as its sequel. This middle grade fantasy series features Theo, a Chinese American boy, in a world with magic spells instead of smartphones. And Theo tries to solve the mystery of his brother's death with the help and hindrance of a mystical fox named Kai. Publication of the first book is scheduled for early 2022.
If anime and Chinese folklore and Asian folklore in general has taught me anything over the years, it's never trust a fox spirit.
Yeah, that is a thing that crosses over all Asian folktale and myths.
I mean, they're technically they're pretty much the Lokis of our myth, right? They're like the trickster gods usually.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rest of Jesse.
Marvin, what's next?
HarperCollins acquired Unsettled, a middle grade novel in verse by Reem Faruqi, the author of Layla's Lunchbox. The story follows Nura, whose family has recently moved from Karachi, Pakistan to Peachtree City, Georgia, where she wants to blend in at school but stand out in the swimming pool like her star athlete brother. Together, the siblings find a way to overcome prejudice, make new friends, and learn the meaning of becoming settled. Publication is set for summer 2021, and the deal is actually a 2-book deal. So details for the second book are coming.
There might be a sequel.
Yeah.
Oh man, Peachtree City, Georgia. I know where that is.
That's the suburbs of Atlanta,
close.
Right?
Yeah, it's close to where I used to live. Man, I'm really interested because, I mean, Georgia is like more diverse than it used to be. So I'm not sure what time frame this is set at and like what school district it is, because depending on the school district, your school can be like all white people or like 40% Asian people. So so I'm like really interested in like how like what the setting is like. Yeah. It's like my first time seeing a book, like a children's book that is set in Georgia. So
and I am not like the city of Georgia, but like the suburbs, right? Where
like the suburbs, not like Atlanta or Savannah and like set during slavery. So it's nice to get like a contemporary piece that's set in the suburbs of Atlanta. Yeah. Next up, Simon & Schuster, Penguin Random House Australia, and Usborne Publishing UK have bought A Glass House of Stars by Chinese-Australian author Shirley Marr. The story follows the immigration experience of an 11-year-old girl and is based on the real childhood story of the author, brushed with a touch of magical realism that includes magical gardens, cat gatekeepers, and an ever-changing house. A Glass House of Stars marks Marr's middle grade debut in the US and UK. Publication is planned for summer 2021. Woo, an Aussie author.
That sounds really fun. I think, especially in this day and age, where we're trying to find a way to replace the void left by she who will not be named. It's cool to have something like this that has such a fun aesthetic and of like magical realism, you know?
It really reminds me of Studio Ghibli films. So like you have cat gatekeepers. So you have like that one movie about cats, like I forgot the title, Cat's Tale. I don't know. Don't sue me. And an ever-changing house that kind of reminds me of Howl's Moving Castle. It sounds really fun.
Yeah. Next up, Scholastic acquired Baraka Beats by debut author Maliha Siddiqui. In this middle grade contemporary novel, a Muslim girl joins a boy band in an effort to find her place at a new school, but struggles to reconcile her new friends' interests and her own faith. Publication is slated for 2021. So is this like a Mulan type situation?
No, don't bring Mulan into this. I hate it when the whole trope of like where a girl dresses up as a boy or like joins like a male activity. Like I don't like it being compared to Mulan. Like I feel like that's become such a shorthand for that trope. I mean, and it's nowhere like it doesn't matter like if the story is like nothing like Mulan. It's just, I don't know. I think over time, like my irritation for it has grown.
Yeah, I get it. I think for me, it's like the touch point that I gravitate towards because it's, you know, the easiest way to describe like girl cross dresses to fit in. But it doesn't seem like she's like trying to
cross dress
like,
or anything.
Well, it doesn't seem like she's trying to like pass as a boy though. I didn't get that from this description.
I wonder if like the publicist or like the publishers, they meant like an actual band and not like a boy band, because it just sounds like really, I don't know, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
But we'll see as it approaches. It comes out in 2021, so I guess like as we get closer to that to that date, we'll see more information on it. So congratulations again to Malia Siddiqui. So yeah, and that was our last book deal. So we're gonna move on.
We have one more actually.
Oh, we do. Okay.
Breaking news from last week: StarWars.com announced a new anthology collection called "From a Certain Point of View: The Empire Strikes Back." A new anthology to celebrate the 40-year anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back. So this is, I guess, the second one of these anthologies that they've done, collecting a series of short stories, I think 40 short stories that are canonical to the original timeline, because I don't know how big of a Star Wars fan you are, Rira, but back in the day, when the expanded universe was still technically canon, there were a lot of these anthology books called like Tales from Mos Eisley, where like a lot of authors came and wrote short stories about all the characters that were in that cantina at the same time as Han Solo and Luke were, doing their deal. And what's really cool about this anthology is like the list of authors are very diverse, and a lot of them are like old friends of ours. Yeah,
like some of the authors that that are familiar names to us are Mike Chen, Lydia Kang, R.F. Kuang, C.B. Lee, Charles Yu. I think Sarah Kuhn is also one of the writers as well. So a lot of people who we've interviewed on this show or read their books as part of our book club.
From a Certain Point of View arrives November 10th and is available on pre-order now at StarWars.com. I'll probably get it.
You probably will.
And yeah, that's it for the publishing news for this past month. Quite a bit of deals. I'm really happy for all the authors who are able to get their books out there. Although hopefully they got good deals, because that is a story that we'll be touching on later.
That is a story. Oh yeah, that's a story. All right. As always, the book deals, we compile that through Publishers Weekly for those who want to look more into those book deals.
All right, so let's move on to book news. Rira, why don't you start us off with this really exciting first story?
Okay, so Netflix and Fresh Off the Boat creator Nanashka Khan are developing an adaptation of Indonesia-based author Jesse Q. Sutanto's upcoming novel Dial A for Aunties. Yeah, Jesse, we've mentioned earlier in our book deals for this episode, and also our last mid-month episode.
Yeah, didn't we just announce this book deal recently?
So we announced it back in our May 2020 mid-month episode. And for those who have not listened to that episode, Dial A for Aunties has been pitched as Crazy Rich Asians meets Weekend at Bernie's. And the story focuses on a young wedding photographer who, along with her mother and aunts, tries to hide the body of a blind date while working the wedding day of a wealthy client. So
sounds fun.
I just wonder who's going to be cast for this.
Yeah. And I'm really interested in the depiction of the aunties, because I feel like it's such a fine line sometimes when you deal with aunties, like capital A aunties, because you can really easily go into stereotype territory. But at the same time, there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of different kinds of aunties. So I'm excited to see what they do here. And this is really awesome because I guess she was able to option the adaptation before her book even came out, right? So it must be.
Well, that's usually the case, because a lot of the times, production companies, they get the manuscript first, and they get a first pass at it, and then they contact the agent for book rights, and it's a whole complicated feature. I worked at a production company that specialized in reading manuscripts and getting options. So
right.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of bad books that make it to the slush pile. So I'm glad that this book got picked up so quickly by a production company.
Yeah.
Netflix on top of that too. So
I mean, having the Nausicaa Con attached to it doesn't hurt. And like the cynical part of me, like the cynical business side of my brain also knows that pitching it as like Crazy Rich Asians meets Weekend at Bernie's also helps, because those are the key, like Crazy Rich Asians, I feel like are the key words that are buzzy in the industry as of like the last 2 years, you know? So it's smart of them to draft on that. And I'm excited that this will get made.
Yeah. And any movie or book that takes place during a wedding, it's always going to be a hit.
Yeah.
So if you have been paying attention to publishing news over the last week and a half, I guess, you probably noticed the hashtag blackout bestsellers. So I'm just going to briefly go over what that campaign was. It was launched June 14th by Tracy Sherrod of Amistad Press. And pretty much the purpose of the hashtag was to encourage readers to buy at least 2 books by Black authors. This way, it shows the publishing industry that Black authors are marketable, that, you know, there is an audience out there and that they can be bestsellers. And, you know, for that week, many Black authors made it to the New York Times bestseller list, as well as like indie bestsellers, Barnes & Noble bestsellers, a lot of lists. And a lot of the and like some of the most notable bestsellers were The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, Stamped by Jason Reynolds, and So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijoma Oluo. So you probably saw those books floating around Twitter, and also like a lot of articles that listed anti-racist books over the past month.
Yeah, I mean, again, the cynical side of my brain is saying, yes, take advantage of the situation, take that white guilt money, because I mean, it is cynical of me to say, but I don't think these books would be on these people's radars if it wasn't for the current shitty situation that we're in. So
it's really unfortunate that it took like an uprising for these books to actually get noticed, especially some of them who have been in publishing for, you know, over a decade.
Yeah. So yeah, like all of a sudden people want to learn about racism, and so there are all these resources available, so you don't have to ask your one Black friend to explain things to you. But also, did you see this backlash against Black bookstores that's been going around?
No, I haven't. Fill me in.
So apparently, because these books are so popular, NPT Bookscan reported that political science civil rights books saw a 300% increase in sales from May 17 to May 23, while anti-racist and discrimination books saw a jump of 245%. So a lot of people are buying these books, and they're buying them from Black booksellers, which, you know, people are encouraging because, you know, you want to support your independent bookstores. But apparently a lot of them are getting pissed because it's taking so long for their books to get here. And they're blaming the booksellers for like not being good at their jobs, for like delaying their
that's
orders.
Like the story of like my local bookstore, and it's not even like Black owned. I feel like all independent booksellers are going through this right now.
And they're canceling their order, saying, I went out of my way to buy White Fragility or The New Jim Crow, and you're not getting to me in time. I'll just buy from Amazon. And it's like,
well, first off, fuck those people.
and it's not even the bookseller's fault. It's like, if everyone's going to buy the same book, that book's going to be out of stock, which means the publisher needs to print more books, which takes time.
Yeah, like the thing is, like I looked at some of the numbers for these books. I think How to Be Anti-Racist, I think originally they only printed like 50,000 copies. And that is like way too little for the audience right now. So of course they have to like go into reprinting, which takes time, like you said. And
so blame bad demand planning for not anticipating an uprising, and also like learn about supply chains.
Yeah, and like the people who are complaining that, like, you know, the book is taking too long to be delivered to me, I'm going to cancel my order. You can always buy the audiobook on Libro FM. You can like a lot of bookstores, they sell ebooks through Paper Trail and through Kobo. And it's so frustrating. And also Stamped by Jason Reynolds, that's actually free right now on Spotify. So yeah, like I'm not so sure about like profit splitting when it comes to that, because they must have like, because of copyright reason, it should go to the author in some capacity. That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean,
but the thing is, like, if you are impatient to get your book, like, listen to it as the order is being processed. so it's like I don't understand. Like,
well, you know why? It's because they can't Instagram it to show that they're learning.
Also,
now I'm being
like,
super cynical.
The thing is, like, with Blackout bestsellers, this isn't just, let's, like, we did it for this week, we're done. Like, no, you need to do that for, like, pretty much forever. Because it's so unfortunate that it took this long for these books to be recognized and for Black authors to be recognized in other lists as well and other genres. And it's just like I think it would be a good habit for book buyers to buy a book by a Black author or buy a book by an author of color every single time you go into a bookstore. So if you're going to buy a book by a white author, like, make sure you buy an extra copy for an author of color. It'll really help with sales and bringing them up on the bestsellers list. So
yeah. Speaking of bestsellers, that brings us to our next story, which trended, I think, about a week ago. It's so wild that, like,
it trended at the beginning of the month, and it's really still ongoing.
Yeah. So, tell me about Publishing Paid Me.
Okay, so Publishing Paid Me was a hashtag that was started by YA author LL McKinney, and that hashtag started on June 6th, so beginning of the month, and it's still ongoing. And the whole point of the hashtag was meant to shed light on the pay disparity between white authors and Black authors specifically. And a bunch of authors, they shared the advances that they got, the amount of money that they got before their book got sold or before their book got published, for those who don't understand what an advance is. Explain advances to me. To me, Marvin.
I really wish that we've always said we want to get a publisher, or like we want to get like a publisher agent on our podcast to talk about this kind of stuff, because it is interesting. And so advances are what the publisher pays the author before taxes and the agent's cuts are taken out. So authors don't receive any additional money or royalties until they earn out their advance. So if you get like a $10,000 advance, until your book makes $10,000 in sales, you don't get additional royalties from that book. So the higher the advance that the author gets, the more the publisher believes that the book will sell. And I think for a lot of authors, like, the advance is like what they get paid for their book, right? Because a lot of books don't earn out.
Oh yeah, most books don't earn out. And also, the advance isn't just given all at once. Like, they'll give it to you in like increments. So it's not like you get all of the money at once. And sometimes, like, these books take like more than 3 years to get published. So yeah, like, the money isn't, like, depending on how high the advance is, like, you're not going to be able to live off of it.
Yeah. And a lot of authors, I think, unless you're a proven author, you don't get the multiple book deals, right? So you don't even get the advance until you finish your manuscript, which can take years.
They're like, advances fluctuate depending on like how your book got sold. Did it get sold at auction? Are you part of like, did it get sold to like the big 5 publishers? But that's like all miscellaneous information. The main point of this hashtag was to show the disparity in pay between Black authors and white authors, as well as authors of color. And I was really appalled seeing the numbers. Like, I always knew that there was like a pay disparity, but like the humongous gap.
Yeah, it's pretty egregious.
So just to give some examples of some numbers, Jasmine Ward received $100,000 advance for her book, Sing Unburied Sing. And that was after she like really fought for it. It was like a very fierce negotiation. And her previous book, Salvage the Bones, received a 20,000 advance. And that book won a National Book Award in 2011. So like her book won this really big award, and like her next book barely like she had to fight to get that first $100,000 advance for like as her follow-up. And Sing Unburied's Song also won the National Book Award the year it came out. I think it was like in 2017. So Jesmyn Ward is the first author to win 2 National Book Awards, if I'm correct. So a very notable author who had to fight their way to get like a decent advance, because I don't even think 100,000 is that high
for an award-winning author who like wrote a hit. Like it's not, and you know, there's a lot of ways that the industry uses to justify this, like, oh, this is just what we're paying other authors in your bracket or in your category, which just is like, I mean, when we talk about systemic racism and systemic discrimination, this is what we mean. Like the mere fact that you are a female person of color means that we believe the stuff you write will make less money than this like other white dude, you know? And it's like baked into their data, right? I mean, movements like this seek to question, because a lot of times these advances are like, they're secret too. People don't like talking about how much they make because of this like sense of like humility that society places on people. Like you shouldn't brag about how much you make, because what if you make other people feel bad? But like at the same time, if you don't know how much people make, how do you know that you're not being screwed?
Yeah, it's a scam that, you know, executives have made up so that they can continue, you know, like paying people of color less, paying people who are from marginalized communities less.
Actually, I mean, compared to like white authors, because the movement has spread and a lot of like allies have also been like releasing their information. Like Chip Creek, a white author, received $800,000 in advance for his debut. For his debut, Cape May, like his first book, received like 8 times what Jesmyn received as a
person who won an
award-winning author. Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to correct something that I said earlier. Jesmyn Ward is the first woman author to win twice for the National Book Award in fiction. So yeah, like a groundbreaking author.
And, you know, not to like assume too much, but like, I'm sure the National Book Award has a history of like not recognizing women too, right?
Oh yeah. There was some stuff that went down this week that I'm not going to dig into because I've been off social media for so long, because it's just been, everything has been on fire. But another really notable Black author who, you know, got like the short end of the stick when it comes to her advances was N.K. Jemisin. She received a $25,000 advance for each book in her Broken Earth trilogy, which is so crazy to me because it's so wild to me. She's the first author to win the Hugo Best Novel Award 3 years in a row. And like her follow-up trilogy to the Broken Earth trilogy, it received an advance for $60,000 per book, which is still like way too low for me for someone who won like the Hugo Awards 3 times.
And it's not even that, like, sure, like if you set that bar low, obviously as an award-winning author with a good following, she's going to earn out and earn royalties and she'll still make money. But like, we can't look at it as like how much money she makes overall for the book. We have to look at it as like, this is how much the industry is willing to invest in you because of who you are. Because I guarantee if she was not like a Black woman author, sci-fi author, she would be getting at least double that, if not more. Like, Jeannie Cummins, who like is the author of the controversial American Dirt novel about the border, which got like huge backlash from like the literary community in general, which still ended up being a New York Times bestseller and still like got picked up by a movie because it got plugged by Oprah. She received a 7-figure advance from auction for that book. Like, It's
Yeah, and like the people who are going to say like, well, that was like a literary fiction novel, and N.K. Jemisin is a sci-fi author. Sci-fi doesn't get as much high of an advance. Like, come on. Like, I'm pretty sure that there are some white male sci-fi authors who received like 6-figure advances for their novels.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
But I also want to including all the so a lot of Asian authors have also participated in this hashtag, and the amount of money that they've disclosed that they've received for advances. I
was really, really appalled. And there are some Asian authors who had posted their advances, but then they took it out. They deleted their tweet because the conversation around what publishing paid me, it kind of shifted. It shifted from showing the wealth disparity to like white authors being like, well, this is how much I made, and a lot of like white guilt, and it just kind of like detracted from like actually showing support to authors of color. So for the numbers that I pulled for Asian authors, these are the authors who have not deleted their tweet. So some of the numbers that I have here is Rin Chupeko received a $15,000 advance for her The Girl from the Well duology. So 2 books for $15,000 in total. And then her Bone Witch trilogy got a $45,000 advance. So 3 books for $45,000. Not a lot. This number really, really shocked me. Cindy Pon received a $300 advance for Serpentine in 2015. 300. Like, and her book Want, which is a sci-fi novel that I have raved about on this show, that book only got $17,500 for their advance. Another really shocking number was Viet-Thanh Nguyen, who wrote The Sympathizer. He received a $35,000 advance for that book, and that was his only offer for a Pulitzer-winning novel.
Yeah. And again, like I feel like we need to repeat that. Like, it's not that these authors didn't end up making their money back and earning tons of royalties and like, making decent money off these books. That's not the point. Like, the point is, based on these advances, you see like the ingrained systemic assumptions that industry places on authors of minority communities. And like when you compare that to the advances given to white authors who may have less experience or less pedigree, there is a disparity that cannot be explained by just maybe they just believed in their work better, or they're better authors. Like that can't be an excuse. That isn't an excuse.
The thing about these advances, though, is it's how much, like you said, it's how much the publishers believe in these authors. Like this, they're like, okay, like this isn't going to sell as much, so here's like a lower advance. And the thing is, like these advances are self-fulfilling prophecies, because the lower the advance, like the less money that these publishers are going to spend on marketing, and that means that there's less exposure, less distribution. So that means readers will not be able to read as widely as they would for a book.
Right. And then that feedback loop gets looped back. And then they say, well, last time we took a chance on this author and paid them this much, it made this much. So we're going to pay you less because we don't think there's a market for your book. And that is how this behavior becomes systemic, because the data, like people think data is objective. Like, oh, data doesn't lie, but data can be taught. And a lot of times data is taught to be racist, especially in how people read it, and then that data becomes the reason to be racist, like unconsciously, right? It's so like, as with every other thing that's being like reckoned with during this cycle of history, we should just burn it all down and start from scratch. Like
the foundation is already like it's so broken. Might as well burn it all down and start over. And like the publishing industry, they had a day of action, which happened on June 8th. And the day of action was, like over 1,000 publishing employees. They, they donated their day's pay to like Black organizations and the Equal Justice Initiative. They spent the day, working more on getting Black authors published and participating in protests and pretty much like, trying to figure out like how to diversify their workforce. I'm sure it didn't just end, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't just like a day worth of action. It was like the start. It was like the starting point. So there is like publishing knows what's up. But publishing is so behind the curve. Like I would say publishing is about like 3 years behind other mediums when it comes to implementing change.
And that's including the fact that the other mediums are also like years behind the curve in general.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like We Need Diverse Books got founded in late 2015. And like if you look at the data between children's books that were published by authors of color compared to now, like it took that long for us to get those numbers. And like the number is still not high enough.
Yeah. Well, the plus side of chaos is it gives the world a chance to rebuild itself. And, it's actually a trope that we've seen in a lot of like genre fiction, right? The world that emerges from like this time period, we can't go back to what it was. It has to be something new, right? And I hope it's something new. It seems like we want something new. It seems like a lot of people are fed up of staying silent and like kind of putting their heads down. Like we have this chance to really rebuild a new world that we want to live in. And so I want to like commend all, like we said in the beginning, like all the people who have spoken out, who have been courageous enough to speak out against injustice, inequality, and discrimination that they've seen in their industry and really bring it to the light because like it's the thing with like modern politics, right? Like we can't assume people will do the right thing because they are good. We have to force them to do the right thing so they don't look bad, And when we're dealing with, politicians or corporations that are treated like people, I mean, that's really the only way we can institute change right now.
Yeah. I don't want to end the episode on a bummer, but yes, that is an optimistic spin on it. Yeah.
I think, I have to believe that what's happening today, what's happening now will lead to a better publishing industry, a better media industry, a better country, a better world.
I just think about all of the really talented people of color who, had dreams of breaking into the publishing industry, who wrote really great books, but then they got churned down because these publishers said that their books won't sell, or that, we already have a Black author like that we're publishing this year. Like, that those conversations happened. And it's just really discouraging to remember like how many creators we lost. And, I hope all of this, like counts in the future. Like, I hope that like things do change. I'm a really cynical person. And I don't personally, I don't think anything is going to change for another 5 years, but you just have to keep trying.
I mean, if there's ever a time for change, it's now, right? So to everyone listening, for everyone who has stuck around this past hour listening to us go over the book news, like it's on all of us to really speak out, to amplify voices, to signal boost, and to show the publishing industry and the market in general, like what we demand. And like we demand better representation, we demand better treatment, we demand a more just and equal world. And like, if there's ever been a time to like kind of be vocal about that, it's now.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing it all across industry, like across all industries. So yeah, it is a very big moment right now. Take advantage of it.
So yeah, retweet, boost, talk to people about the hashtag movements, however you can contribute in your own way using your personal clout, your personal voice, no matter what medium it takes place. It doesn't have to be in social media. Even talking to people, your friends, about like what you're reading, what you're seeing, what you believe in, and like kind of getting those conversations going will trickle down. Because if all of us do that, like there is that ripple effect. So, yeah, I mean, we all resist, we all revolt in our own way, and the important thing is that we rise up together, right?
Yep. Well said. So like I'll remind folks what we're reading for the month of June. I know it is like a wild month. Hang in there. So our June 2020 book club pick is Convenience Store Women by Sayaka Murata. I took a peek in our Goodreads forums, and people are telling me that this is not the happy book, that the lighthearted book that we expected. And I'm really sorry for recommending something that didn't end up being a break from what is happening in the world. You know what?
It's still I think it's still a good book to read, so don't even worry about it. I think we tried.
I mean, keep in mind that I try to pick books that I personally have not read. So anything I say before our discussion episode, please take it with a grain of salt, I guess.
Yeah. And with that, that'll also do it for this episode of Books and Boba. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll see you next time. Thanks, Rira.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Books and Boba. This podcast was hosted by Marvin Yue and Rira Yu and edited and produced by Marvin Yue. Follow the book club on Twitter and Instagram by going to @BooksandBoba and engage with us on Goodreads on our Goodreads group. You can also check out past episodes of the podcast by going to booksandboba.com and by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast app. Books and Boba is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of Asian American hosted podcasts featuring unique voices and stories from the Asian diaspora. Learn more about the collective and check out our fellow Potluck shows by visiting the website podcastpotluck.com. Thanks for listening.
Kathy, Kim!
Steve? What's going on?
Tell me, what do you know about K-dramas?
They have something to do with the drama that comes from K-cup coffee pots, because they're bad for the environment?
No.
Oh, you mean Korean dramas? Yeah, I know that they are very grounded in reality.
No, that's actually the opposite of what happens. It sounds like you don't know anything about K-dramas.
Yeah, I was just guessing.
That's actually perfect. Remember Will, Phil, and Joanna did that Korean drama podcast?
Yeah, they saw Boys Over Flowers.
Yes, and people apparently listened to it and want another season. But Will and Phil are still recovering from that season.
Oh my god, are they okay?
I did hear they tried to give themselves amnesia.
Oh, is that a K-drama thing?
Yeah, pretty much. So, are you guys down to help out with the new season of the Korean drama podcast?
So we're going to be watching a K-drama this time?
Which one?
Secret Garden from 2010. It was a big hit. And if you're down, check out the Korean drama podcast at koreandramapod.com.
Kaja!
Am I going to see sauna towel buns?